Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to Aries e-lecture series and greetings from Aries Nainital. So I will be basically discussing more on the trace gases aspect on the which is related to air quality and climate change. So my talk I have divided basically into two parts. The today I will be discussing mainly on the introductory part, and then next week on the next Friday I will be talking more on the trace gases relevant to the stratosphere and troposphere. Now, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the material which I used from different material, including like websites, books, paper, and from the colleagues. So the outline of my talk is here. So like I was mentioning, today I will be covering these two parts. One is the atmospheric composition and the greenhouse effect, and then meteorology dynamics in the cloud. And the more meteorology dynamics in the cloud is basically which is more relevant for the trace gases. Okay. So to begin with, what is the basically atmosphere? When I say atmosphere here in the reference of the earth atmosphere, so in the atmosphere, basically it is mixture of the gases with suspended solid and liquid particle that envelops the earth. And these mixture of the gases which are suspended solid and liquid particle, they are bound by the gravity. So basically resulting the maximum pressure at the earth's surface. Now, when I say they are bound by gravity, so obviously most of the mass will be close to the Earth's surface. And if you see this important point, like most of the atmosphere mass is in very thin layer, and compared to the if you see Earth radius, and when I say thin layer, it is approximately around 12 to 15 kilometer, and almost 90% of the atmospheric mass is remains in this altitude region. Of course, this I will be discussing or explaining more in this next few slides. So what is the meaning of this mass? Okay. Now here the about the chemical composition. Of course, this is the basic thing which we have studied in the class 9, 10th or in the basic school. Now here I would like to focus on this like two different aspect. One is the basically you can see three gases: nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. These gases makes in the atmosphere almost 99.9%, and less than 0.1% are remaining gases. So the gases which are the less than 0.1%, they are called the trace gases because our reference in the trace gases. That is one aspect. Another important aspect I would like to draw here, like the gases which are in the yellow color, like nitrogen, oxygen, argon, and the neon, helium, krypton, and hydrogen. These gases we call the fixed gases. That means their concentration is not changing with time or space. So our major interest comes on the variable gases which are listed in the white color, like carbon dioxide, methane, ozone, and several other trace gases, small trace gases, because their concentration or mixing ratio amount is changing with time and space, and they are directly influenced by the activity by the humankind, or we call the anthropogenic activity. So concentration wise, or you say in terms of mixing ratio, the carbon dioxide, which is approximately around 395, and if you see now in this many places now it is reported around 400 ppm, which is now crossing the level. And ozone, depending on the space, whether it is in the troposphere, stratosphere, it will change. And then methane also, it is globally it is around 1.75, 1.8, or sometimes somewhere it is around 1.9 also, crossing to 2 ppm. So these, as I mentioned, these are called the trace gases, which is less than 0.1%. And there is another classification in trace gases we call the major trace gases and minor trace gases, that I will be explaining in the next slide. An important point here goes in the with the water vapor, which I have not listed in the table, but its amount is very highly variable. Like it goes from almost you can say the from 0.1% to almost in the ppm level. So water vapor is also highly variable. So if you see, as I just was mentioning these fixed gases and variable gases, and these variable gases are basically you can draw in the two groups. One is the basically the major trace gases, or called the major constituents, and the minor constituents. So when we say major constituents, means their mixing ratio in terms of ppm, like CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone in the stratosphere. And on the same time, when ozone comes in the troposphere, it becomes the minor constituents, or where their mixing ratio in the terms of ppb, ppt. And in the next few slides, I will also explain about what is ppm, ppb, and ppt. So if you see in the minor constituents, there are ozone, then carbon monoxide, NO, NO2, and then non-methane hydrocarbon. The methane goes in the major constituents, but non-methane hydrocarbon comes in the minor constituents. Then CFCs, SO2, and these radicals, some of the radicals, hydroxyl radicals. So with this, and I was mentioning this mixing ratio. So before that, of course, we are very familiar with the one unit called the number density. Number density is very common unit which we use. It is similar to the mass density. So number density for any gas is basically number of molecule of gases divided by the unit volume of air. So this parameter is very useful for the calculating of the reaction rate in the atmosphere, or also for studying the optical property of the atmosphere. But for for air quality purpose, and the, or for the, you can say, the in the climate change, sometimes we need an important parameter we call the mixing ratio. And so how this mixing ratio is defined? Mixing ratio is nothing but basically the number density ratio of the number density of particular gas by the number density of air, or you can also say the mole of particular gas by the mole of air. So importance of the mixing ratio comes because it remains constant in the atmosphere, whereas air density changes with the pressure or the temperature. So this is basically mixing ratio is the robust measure of the atmosphere composition. As I was mentioning, we commonly use this unit like ppm, ppb, or ppt. They are basically nothing but, in simple language you can understand, like in case of ppm, when in the atmosphere, almost you can say the about 10 to power of 1 million molecule of air out of one, then 1 ppm is it 1 molecule of that gases. Like for example, I say 10 ppm of ozone. That means in air, the 10 raised to power 6 molecule of air is there, and out of that only 10 molecules of ozone is there. So similarly ppb and ppt. And many times we need to convert this one. So this is the very basic thing, like how to interconvert the mixing ratio and the number density. And this we use the Avogadro number. This is we already know, and utilize the number density relation with the Avogadro number and ideal gas law. So using this relation, if you even don't know the number density of air, you can calculate the number density of particular gas utilizing the mixing ratio value and these numbers. So these are some of the basic things I am also covering. And one important parameter for this is the atmospheric pressure. How do we measure the pressure and what is the importance? So this is the one very simple method. Of course, we have studied in our class 9, 10th. And here basically pressure is measured by the inverted mercury barometer. And here you can see the tub which is filled with the mercury and inverted tube filled with the mercury. So basically the atmospheric pressure at this point V, which is nothing but the pressure exerted by the atmosphere, is almost same is as the pressure exerted by this mercury in this tube. So using this law and this pressure exerted by the mercury in the tube length of height h. So with this, the pressure at point A and pressure at point B is calculated with the rho gh. And if you calculate with simple calculation, this comes out to the 1013 hectopascal. So this is nothing but the mean pressure at the sea level of the atmosphere. You can also say in the millibar, or this also 1 atmosphere pressure, or in terms of the mercury bar, this is 760 millibar millimeter height. Okay. So now if you see in terms of the actual atmosphere, what is the importance of this value and how this changes, you see here how this pressure changes in the atmosphere. And this is the, of course, theoretical calculated value. Pressure on axis is the pressure, and y-axis is showing the altitude. It varies from 0 to 100 kilometer. And to have an idea, at the surface, as I mentioned, the pressure we assume is 1000, which is actually 1013 millibar. So if you go at the height of around 5.5 kilometer here, this point, pressure reduced by 500 millibar. So which is nothing but almost 50%. So that means the 50% of the atmosphere is lying at the height below of 5.5 kilometer. Same way, if you go up, say at the height of around the 48 kilometer, the pressure becomes 1 millibar. So that means this 1 millibar is 99.1% of this 1000 millibar, 1013 millibar. So that means the almost 99.9% of the atmosphere is lying below the 48 kilometer. So that means when you are going up, atmosphere is becoming thinner and thinner. To have an idea, if you go at around altitude of about 80 kilometer, the pressure becomes 0.01 millibar. So that means atmosphere pressure is almost the or 99.39 atmosphere is below this height. So basically in atmosphere, why I am mentioning this value, in atmosphere, when you do the general calculation or the study or modeling, we consider as a quantity top of the atmosphere. So this is the basically altitude considered top of the atmosphere, 80 to 100 kilometer, and above that it considered the atmosphere is very thin or almost not existing. So this is the basically one parameter which is considered top of the atmosphere. Now, another result, important point comes here. Like I was mentioning, the mean surface pressure level is around 1013 millibar. Now, considering because there are a lot of mountains on the surface, so what is the basically global mean pressure at the surface? And if you see, considering this height and pressure variation, the global mean pressure at the surface of the Earth is almost 984 millibar. So this also one has to consider the quantity. So here I am just until now I was showing the actual the theoretical calculator. Here is the we have the balloon launch facility at Aries. Of course, this I will telling more on the my next lecture. And here with the actual observation with this balloon, we measure the pressure at the Nainital, how it is changing, and you can see the exponential decreasing. An important point like these are the balloon flight at the four different time zone, and you don't see the very significant change in the pressure. So this is you can see with the time in different time of day how it is changing. So again if you see the Nainital altitude is around 1.9 kilometer. So surface pressure is at around 805 millibar here. So that means the 20% of the atmosphere is lying below this altitude. Okay. So this is the basically have an idea like you can also feel the same thing when you go at higher height, you have the breathing problems because oxygen becomes lesser and lesser. Now this is the another aspect like the thermal structure of the atmosphere. So of course I will not be going the more detail on the thermal structure. What I am trying to here correlate the importance in terms of the air pollution and the climate change. In which region what is the process is happening. So here you can see in the temperature wise there are different layers, troposphere, stratosphere and the mesosphere. Above that one goes the thermosphere which is not shown here. So and this dotted line is showing tropopause which also changes depending on the which latitude you are. At equator the tropopause is around you can say 16 to 18 kilometer, but at the pole it comes around 8 to 9 kilometer. So the importance I will be mentioning slightly later. And here the another aspect which I would like to draw your attention, as I was mentioning, there are two different phenomena. One is the air pollution and weather change. Another is the climate change. So if you see in terms of the vertical structure, this air pollution and weather change, these phenomena is basically more focused or the responsible in the lower part of the atmosphere, like troposphere and the lower stratosphere, whereas the climate change is basically happening in the almost entire atmosphere. When I say entire atmosphere, means until the top of the atmosphere, 80 to 100 kilometer region. So this is the one aspect. Another phenomena which is basically another important which I will be covering slightly later, the formation of the clouds which is also happening in the tropospheric region. And then bottom line you can see the one yellow color line is showing the boundary layer. So in the atmosphere the different process is happening and more complex processes are happening in the troposphere. So for our study basically this is the most complex region I will say, because you have the emission, you have the meteorology, you have the dynamics. So these things are basically taking place. So as I mentioned in the meteorology and dynamics, so here just some of the basic thing, because this lecture is basically focused for the undergraduate and graduate students. So I'm trying to explain some of the basic things which are relevant for the air quality and the climate change. So here basically when you talk of the meteorology dynamics, most important or basic things comes about the pressure system. So here I am trying to explain over the land mass. This is the different contour of the pressure system, and you can see the H and L, they are designated with the low pressure system and high pressure system. So what do you mean by low pressure system and high pressure system? This you consider in the reference of the surface level pressure, which is 1013 millibar. So when you talk about the high pressure system, that means at the center you have the relatively high pressure when you compare in the surrounding. Like here in the center you have the pressure of 1008, but in the surrounding you have the pressure of 1000. So in the center you have the high pressure, so this is called the high pressure system. In reverse way, in the center we have the low pressure system. When you compare with the surrounding, it calls the low pressure system. And and always you have the flow of the air mass or wind flow from high pressure to low pressure system. So that is basically triggers the dynamics in the atmosphere. And this of course this also happens with the change in the temperature, that again I will cover slightly later. Now another practical aspect of this low pressure and high pressure system is in the weather system. Now here I am just comparing the two phenomena. One at like in the surface when you have the low pressure system. So this is basically nothing but the convergence. So air is converging at the surface level in the center. So this leads to the rise of the air because the converging is taking place. So this is something like upwelling. Now when you have the upwelling, this is rising, this air cools down by the expansion, and when air is cooling down it is lead to increase of humidity, and that ultimately lead to the rainfall. So when you have the converging system or low pressure system at the surface, this is leading to the rainfall, or the we can say the related to the monsoon system. When you have the high pressure system at the surface, basically you have the sinking motion, and then it is diverging of the air mass, and that is leading to the basically sink, it heats up and its air descends, and when it descending it is reduce the humidity and leading to the sunny and weather condition. So this is the basically when you have the high pressure system at the surface leading to the sunny and weather condition, sunny and dry weather condition. So, and now this is the, apart from this, like we have the another important aspect, the dynamics, and this is the basically movement of the air from different region to another region. And here I am trying to show how the air mass from one region to another region over the globe is influencing. And if you try to focus here, this is the basically North American region, and here is the Europe, and here is the Asia. And these different line like purple color or red color or green color line, they are showing the how air mass or the air is traveling from one region to another region, and this takes time almost 7 to 10 days. So what I am trying to say, the because of the dynamics or the change in the pressure and the temperature, the air from one region from Europe can reach to the Asia, or from air from the Asian region can also reach to the United States in the less than 10 days time. So this is also important how the air quality is influencing from one region to another region. And similar thing like this I am just showing for the global system, and over the Indian system also if you try to see, this is for the India, and how air mass from the African region or European region can reach to this northern part of India. So this is also basically showing how system changes. And if you see on the local level also, like over Indian subcontinent, like this is the basically the Nainital, which from where I am speaking, and this is the nearby Delhi. And you try to see how the air mass system is changing throughout the year. And if you see in the winter time, the most of the time winter, the air mass travels from continent region to the oceanic region, whereas in the monsoon time like in the month of the June July, this air mass from the oceanic region travels to the continent. So important aspect is here, the whatever the pollutants in the continent region, they are traveling to the clean air or clean region of the marine side, whereas in the monsoon time the clean air from the oceanic region goes to the land mass region. So this is the system you can say over the Indian continent, and this is the very well established system. in general, but you have the lot of variability in the short term. So that is the basically important point to be studied. And here is the, of course, and yeah, and here I'm trying to say the in the local level or the large scale how this movement influence the pollutant in one region. So here the observation, we have the aerosol observation at the Arish Nainital, and you can see the air mass which is coming from the Thar desert is reached to this Himalayan region at high altitude, and you can see significant enhancement in the aerosol, almost you can 2 times to 10 times increase in the aerosol. So this is the basically you can see the direct implication of the dynamics on the air quality of the one region apart from the local sources. Now previously here I was showing the on the long range transport. Apart from the long range transport, how the change in the wind pattern affect within a city region. Like this is the one campaign done in the Ahmedabad region for long back, and in the 1 month, in the month of October, you can see this is the wind direction changing, and within a short period of time, in 1 or 2 hours, you can see significant enhancement in the pollutants at the local level. And but same time, if you can see in the monsoon period on the May when wind is very calm, you don't see the much change in the wind, and the pollutant levels are almost you can see the at the base level. So what I'm trying to point at here, like in this very short time, in like in the less than 1 hour, the local level pollution can also affect the air quality at the receptor. So you have the effect of the long range transport system, and you have the at the local system. Now this I am going to the another component. This is the boundary layer which I was mentioning. This is the lowermost portion in the troposphere, which is directly influenced by the earth's surface and responding to different forcing. And then we respond to the forcing means they are responding in less than 1 hour. Now, what are the basically component? There you have the thermal changes in the atmosphere, and the pollutant emissions are taking place within this layer. You have the evaporation, you have the transpiration, and terrain induced flow because of the topography. And this also boundary layer. This also in the also you can define as the planetary boundary layer. So, what is why we are interested? I am just explaining in terms of the trace gases or in terms of the ozone is here. Like this one typical example, like in a day from 0 hours to 24 hours, how ozone level changes because of this boundary layer. I am not covering considering basically chemistry here, just trying to show in terms of the dynamics. And here is the basically height of this boundary layer, which is approximately consider is change in a day at the height of around 2000 to 2000 meter. So here is the basically how boundary layer changes. Now if you talk in terms of ozone, ozone maybe I will detail I will be covering in my next lecture, but ozone is basically produced by the photochemistry, okay, involving the different trace gases. And here, but apart from that photochemistry, the boundary layer is also playing role because you have the formation of the boundary layer. So in the night time, this ozone level because of the photochemical reaction is not taking place, so ozone production is not there, and ozone comes in the contact of the surface, you have the loss of the ozone. So because of the boundary layer formation at the lower height, you have the ozone loss. Now this ozone which I am talking at the talking about the surface ozone at the in the tropospheric part. Now when you can see this boundary layer evolve and it increases, it basically lead to the mixing of this low ozone with the high ozone, which is basically above the boundary layer. So this lead to the basically evolving or the changes or mixing of the different pollutants. That's the one effect, and this of course theoretically one can also calculate using this equation. So that is the one another methodology. Now until now we were talking of the boundary layer over the land mass. There is also boundary layer over the marine region, but it is very much different, and different in the sense because it is basically influenced by the pressure system. Reason is because thermal or mechanical turbulence is not much significant over the marine region because you don't have much change in the temperature, and also the surfaces water body surface is very smooth, so you don't have the mechanical turbulence. So this is basically governed by the pressure system. So in short, the marine boundary layer is not very important in the sense when you say in terms of the dynamics or changing in the chemistry. And another part, when it comes in the terms of the dynamics or meteorology, is comes the change in the pressure because of the differential heating at the surface. Now, this is when you consider the surface, the temperature is almost uniform over the land mass. So, you have the uniform isobar line of the pressure. But because you have the change in the temperature at the surface, like at this region you have the warm temperature and this region you have the cool temperature, so you have the change in the pressure system. So because here at the lower height you can see the pressure decreases, so this leads to the development of the low pressure system and high pressure system, and that lead to the basically movement of the air mass, or we can generation of the pressure gradient force. So this basically generate the flow of the air mass. Now this we, if we try to understand how is it important over the coastal region or over the mountain region, this system how it changes, and that which called the sea breeze and land breeze. So if you compare in the sea breeze and land breeze type, like in the daytime, the land mass is warmer and the water body is cooler close to the surface. You have the flow of the air mass at the surface level from oceanic region of water body to the land mass. But here is that surface is warmer, it lifts up and it goes up. So in daytime you have this kind of circulation. This is called the sea breeze. So in the daytime you have the flow from the oceanic region, but in the evening time when the sunset is basically approaching, or in the night time, yeah, it is not moving. Okay. So in the land breeze, the system becomes reverse, like on the land mass it is the cool and the water body is warmer at the surface side, so you have the reverse flow of the air circulation. So this is basically important in terms of, again, in the pollutants, like in the night time whatever the pollutants or industries are here, they are going to transport the pollutants over the oceanic body, but in daytime you have the cleaner air coming from the oceanic region. So that's why we say the in the morning time you can walk around the coastal region. Now same phenomena if you try to understand in the mountain valley breeze. So this is again in terms of the pollutants, like we always say the observatory or the clean site, background site make at the mountain top. What is the reason? What? Because in the most of the time in the daytime, on the night time you have the clean air coming, but in the daytime the air is warm, so it lifts up, it goes up. So whatever the pollutants in this valley region, they are going to basically reach at the mountain side here. So in the daytime when you have the observation at the mountain peak, you may have the influence of the pollutants coming from the industrial region or from city side. But in the night time the phenomena become reverse. You have the basically downwinds kind of thing. So the clean air which is at the higher height, it is coming to the observation site and also coming to the valley region. So this kind of circulation is happening. Now another phenomena which is important, the cloud and fog, and of course I will try to cover in the very brief. So what is the basically cloud? Cloud is nothing but hydrometeorites, which is ensemble of the liquid or the solid water particles suspended in or falling throughout the air. Now why we are interested? Now I am talking in terms of, again, a major interest in the air pollution or the air quality or climate change. So the cloud, importance of cloud is basically in the sense of radiation budget. They are highly regulating the radiation budget because of reflecting radiation back to the space and blanketing the lower atmosphere and trapping the IR radiation which is emitted by the earth surface. They are also modifying the temperature, pressure and wind speed, and of course this we know they produce the precipitation, means rainfall. An important point is here again, they are also responsible for rapid vertical mixing of the gases within a few hours. Like with this, the pollutants can go at the very high height within less than a day, and they are also provide the surface for the wet deposition, and they are also providing the medium for the acquisition chemical reactions. So apart from these many importance, the study over the cloud is very least, and there many phenomena is not well understood. So briefly I will try to cover on this one classification of the cloud. So the cloud classification basically you can do in the two kinds of the groups. One is the based on the altitude, another is based on their appearance, how do they appear. So based on the altitude classification, depending on the location or latitude wise, whether in the pole or mid latitude or in tropics, one can define a group in the three categories. So one is the low altitude cloud, mid altitude cloud, and high altitude cloud. And this you can see in case of high altitude cloud, the altitude is basically changing because of the tropopause. As I was mentioning in the previously, the tropopause around the pole is around 8 to 9 kilometer, and whereas in tropics it goes to around 16 to 18 kilometer. So this kind of the you can see different group, and this is basically in terms of the Asian region or in reference of India. You can see the low altitude clouds comes in this category, and the mid altitude clouds comes in 2 to 8 kilometer, and then high altitude cloud comes in the 6 to 18 kilometer altitude. So this is based on the altitude. Now when you talk in terms of the appearance, so again cloud you can classify more or less you can say in the three category. The fourth category is basically nimbus cloud, which is not based on appearance. So the one is the stratus cloud, cumulus cloud, and cirrus cloud. And there also again you can see the how probability, what is the probability of appearance. This stratus cloud appears in the almost most of the region of the atmosphere in terms of you can say in troposphere, but most of the time they found in the lower and middle tropospheric region. But cumulus cloud mostly in the they form in the lower altitude and then goes into middle altitude. And but another the cirrus cloud, they are basically formed at the high altitude. High altitude means in the near the tropopause region. And in this subgroup, these three also can we have the another subgroup combination of different clouds: stratus cloud, altostratus, and nimbostratus. So I was mentioning when this nimbus cloud. So when this nimbus cloud combined with some of this group, they lead to the rainfall. And one very common or popular category like combination of the cumulus or nimbus cumulus is cumulonimbus cloud. And this is the basic more very important cloud category which lead to the transfer of the pollutants from surface layer to higher height, and also the very important for the radiation budget. The cirrus cloud, they are also very important for the radiation budget or the for the estimating the global warming and the cooling effect in the atmosphere. So here I am just trying to show how appearance wise the different category, and you can see this cumulonimbus cloud, they are leading to the rainfall, and you can see the height coverage from surface level to they also can gain lift up to the 10 to 12 kilometer and much higher. And another cloud is nimbostratus cloud, they are also leading to rainfall. So here I am just trying to just show you the different category or different stage of the cumulus formation stage. So this is when you hit the mountain, the moisture and lead to the beginning of the cumulus cloud, and this is the another second state of the formation. This is of course you can say in a stable condition, but it can also depending on the moisture or the convective events, they also convert into the simple cumulus cloud can convert in the cumulonimbus cloud. And you can see the height, this height is almost you can say the few kilometers height. And so what is the basically in the terms of the formation of the cloud, what is the important condition for the formation of the cloud? The most important condition for the formation of the cloud is basically humidity has to be equal to more than 100%, or indirectly you can also say when air can be cool to its dew point temperature. Dew point temperature means like the atmosphere, the air temperature when it is not able to hold the moisture in the atmosphere. That means the moisture is basically precipitating. So most of the time this dew point temperature is much lower to the atmospheric temperature. So for this, the either dew point temperature has to increase and go to ambient temperature. Now this phenomena or this condition, how do we can achieve? This can be achieved by basically three condition or three processes. This cooling can either take by the vertical movement of the system, or it can also cooling can also take with the horizontal movement, or cooling can also take with the coming in the contact of the surface area. When I say the cooling by the vertical movement, that is nothing but the, you can say convection or the force uplifting. This is orographic, which I was just showing the previously formation of the cumulus cloud. So this is the basically you can say the cloud actual cloud condition, and this also happens with the convergence of at the fronts. Apart from the vertical movement, how the cooling can also take place by the horizontal movement, and this basically called the fog. And so this is nothing but the advection cooling. and this basically takes place mostly when warm air passes over the cooler surface. So you can see this also most of the time you can see it can happens near the river or water body when your the surface is cooler, or near the lake. And third category comes when contact in the at the night in the night time. This is called the dew formation. So this is nothing but the nocturnal cooling by the emission of the long radiation. So this happens in the most of the in the night time. And of course you can see this cloud, this fog can also convert it in the cloud category, which is again the formation of the cumulus cloud, which I was just mentioning. So again I now come to the another process which is more relevant for the climate change, the greenhouse effect. So just as a history wise, I would like to just mention this greenhouse effect was basically theoretically discovered by the Joseph Fourier in the 1824. Now what he was when he was just keeping in mind or thinking, when solar radiation is coming at the surface, at the earth's surface, and it is re-emitting. So when it is re-emitting, surface temperature has to be cool, but it is not cool, it is warm. So he suggested there is something in the atmosphere which is keeping this earth surface warmer. And that time he suggested that there's greenhouse effect is basically taking place. Now, the after a few years, the first reliable experiment is conducted by the John Tyndall with the CO2 and water vapor, and he showed that these are the basically species which are responsible for the warming kind of thing. Quantitative estimate were made by the Arrhenius for the showing the effect of the greenhouse effect. Now, if you say for the greenhouse effect, for the warming of the earth, energy comes from the sun. So it is also very important to understand and have an idea how much energy from the sun is used in the earth and atmosphere. So if you try to understand the entire system, if I focus here, it is basically almost 50% game, or you can say 51 and 49%. The 51% of the energy is absorbed by the earth, and which is used for the heating and again re-emitting in the process, and 49% of the energy is basically used by the atmosphere, which is absorbed or reflected or scattered. Now, if you go in the breakup of out of this 49, like 6% is scattered from the atmosphere, from top of the atmosphere itself. 20% in the atmosphere is scattered or reflected by the clouds. And 19% is absorbed by the atmosphere and the cloud. And you can see the 4% is reflected by the earth surface. So basically, again, I am summarizing in case of the earth, it is 49 or 51%. And again, in the summary, you can see the budget wise, the 51% is absorbed by the earth, and 49% is absorbed, reflected, and scattered by the atmosphere. And the breakup is here. So our main interest is how much percentage of radiation is used for warming of the earth system. When I say earth system, means earth plus atmosphere. So that is basically, you can see here in this terms of 70%. So 70% means it is 51% which is directly absorbed by the earth, and also 90%, 19% which is absorbed by the earth, the atmosphere and the cloud. So this is the basically energy which is used for the warming of the earth and atmosphere system. Now, again, if you try to see, like to have a feeling, what is the actual effect of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, or how much role, or what is the role of the atmosphere? So we try to understand with this black body curve. So this is a black body curve, and considering Earth as a black body, and temperature is around 5800 Kelvin. So here you can see the dotted line, this dotted line here, continuous, and this is the black body curve considering the earth as the ideal black body. Okay. Now if you try to see the make observation outside the atmosphere, I am using term as the top of the atmosphere. And what is the basically curve? That curve is here, how the black body curve changes, and it is almost matching with the theoretically black body curve. Okay, this thick black line, except you can see some drop here and some enhancement here. Now, of course, this drop is because of the oxygen and other in the atmosphere, which is also available at the higher height. But important point is here, which I was mentioning in my previous slide. This is nothing but the reflection by the clouds. So this is leading to enhancement in the radiation. So this is the one aspect. Now, to understand the greenhouse effect, or the what is the basically happening in the atmosphere. Now, same curve if you do at the sea level. Now you bring down, suppose you are doing some observation, you bring down of your instrument at the sea level, and you try to see how is the radiation changing. So this curve is showing the black body curve at the sea surface level. Now you can see here the lot of reduction in the radiation. You can see here this part, and you can see the lot of absorption. And this absorption was nothing but the absorption by the different gases in the atmosphere. So this next slide I will be covering in which are the gases are responsible at different wavelength for this happening in the atmosphere. And that can be understand here. So this is the absorption by different gases in the atmosphere. And when I say the gases, basically I'm mentioning of the greenhouse gases. So this on top panel is showing the solar radiation curve, and this is the terrestrial radiation curve. And if you come on the bottom panel, on axis is the basically wavelength, and this is the basically you can see the ultraviolet region, and this is the visible, and this is the infrared radiation. So you try to see on which wavelength which gas is playing a role for the warming, or you can see for the absorption of the radiation. So this is one is the nitrous oxide. This of course you can see some peak here in the IR band, and important point comes in the oxygen and ozone, and you can see they are basically absorbing radiation in the UV and beyond that, and there is small absorption by the ozone here, and important absorption by ozone comes in the 9.6 micron wavelength here. And now this is the basically important aspect. You see here this red curve, this is called the atmospheric window. Importance of this atmospheric window is this: except the ozone, none of the gas in atmosphere is having any absorption. So that's why importance of ozone comes here, because it is absorbing in the atmospheric window, and it's also called the efficient greenhouse gas. Ozone is also one of the greenhouse gas. So apart from the ozone or oxygen, you come here CO2. You can see the very large band for the absorption by CO2 here. And apart from the here in the IR here, you can see the long wave radiation here, the most of the absorption by the CO2. And then water vapor, they're having a lot of bands here for the absorption. So and here is the basically composite graph for the all the greenhouse gases. Okay. So that is the, you can see how the different gases are playing important role. Now if you try to understand theoretically, yeah, and here one other point I would like to mention, like the of course we see the greenhouse gases CO2 and the nitrous oxide, methane, or the ozone, and some of the, but water vapor is also very important greenhouse gas. And but it is not basically talked much because it is not having any anthropogenic emissions. It is basically covered by the natural process. So that is why we don't worry on this variability of the water vapor. But again, this is also very complex in the satellite observation. This creates a lot of problem also. The problem in the sense you have to basically put a lot of filter for the actual observation of the atmosphere. So here I am trying to now show how theoretically one can understand in absence of the greenhouse gases what could be the temperature of the earth. You consider that there is no greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So how we can understand, like we know the solar constant for the earth is around 13 and 70 watt per meter square. Now if you try to see what is the solar radiation flux intercepted by the earth, you can see in the cross section area, this is in the circle form. So what is the cross section? You multiply by pi r square. And then is same quantity, what is the flux received outside of the entire atmosphere of the globe, we can see. So divide by 4 pi r square. So this is the basically unit comes around 342 watt per meter square, which is the flux received outside of the atmosphere. Okay. Now if you consider how much energy is used for the warming of atmosphere, so one has to consider about the earth albedo. So we consider basically almost on average the 30% of the incoming solar radiation is reflected by the cloud. So that means 70% of energy is used for the warming of the earth and atmosphere system. So when you say 70% of 342, it comes to around 239.4. This approximate number. So this much energy is used for the warming of the surface and atmosphere coupled system without considering the greenhouse gases. Now you see, if you calculate balance by the energy emitted by the surface and atmosphere, you apply the Stephen Boltzmann's law, nothing but you can say the here. So with this, you can, with the Stephen Boltzmann's law, you can calculate what is the temperature of the earth. So with this, temperature of the earth comes around 255 Kelvin or minus 18 degrees Celsius. So that means if you don't consider the atmosphere, the pollutant or the greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, earth temperature will be around this one. So this also says the some presence of this greenhouse gas is also essential for survival of the human being. Now I am trying to now compare this temperature in presence or absence earth, and also how is it deal with the other planet like Venus and Mars. So apart from the here, another important components comes apart from the presence of the greenhouse gases for making conducive atmosphere of the earth, the surface pressure is also playing very important role. Okay, now here I will go one by one, like considering if you say earth in respective of the earth, the pressure is around 1. At the Venus, the surface pressure is very high, almost 90 times of the earth. At the Mars, the surface pressure is very low, or we can say very thin atmosphere. So keeping in mind in the Venus the surface pressure is very high, Mars surface pressure is very low. Now come to the CO2. The here of course I am considering the CO2 in the earth atmosphere is 0.04%, that is nothing but equivalent to 400 ppm, or also we consider as the 1% as the water vapor. If you go in the Venus, the CO2 is very high, it is more than 90%. If you saw in the Mars, the CO2 is very high, almost more than 80%. So basically one can say the CO2 is very high at Mars and Venus both, if you compare with the Earth. Now come at the actual temperature. In absence of the greenhouse gases, the temperature of the Earth, as previously I showed, calculated is around minus 18 degrees centigrade. And the Venus, in absence, it is minus 46, and the Mars, it is minus 57. Now, if you consider the presence of the CO2 at all the three planets, the Earth becomes livable planet, and then temperature becomes almost 15 degrees centigrade. And the Venus, the temperature increases by 523. The sea temperature becomes almost 477. An important point is here, the Mars, despite of the 80% of CO2, the temperature is still very low. So here the important point, apart from the CO2, the surface pressure is also playing important role, because the atmosphere is very thin. So whatever the CO2, it is well mixed in the at the higher height, from surface level to 100 kilometer or beyond that. So this greenhouse effect is not taking place or much important in case of the Mars. So the temperature is not increasing much. You can see in case of the Mars, despite of the high CO2, but pressure is low, the temperature increased by only 10 degrees centigrade. Okay, so this is another important aspect one has to see. So now here, until now we were talking on the greenhouse effect, and it shows that the greenhouse gases are important, essential until certain level for making the earth as a livable planet. But excess of the greenhouse gases is also harmful. And here I am just trying to show how the global mean temperature is changing. Now, so this you can see in the last 150 or 200 years back, how the temperature is changing. And here is the basically you can see the difference in temperature, and this is the actual estimated global temperature in the centigrade. So if you can see, this dotted line is the dotted spot annual mean, and this is the smooth curve, and you can see these are the basically trend. So if you can see the temperature trend of last 150 years is not much. if you see the increase in temperature of the last 25 years, this one yellow line, this is very, very sharp. Okay, so that indicating, if you see in the compare with the last 100 to 200 years, the increase in temperature is very, very high in the last 25 years or the 50 years. Okay, now if you try to see, this is the global mean temperature. So what I am trying to now again show in the next slide, this phenomena is consistent throughout the globe. And this is, you can see the change in the temperature over the different region of the world and global and continent, and also you can see the over the ocean. And now here important aspect, like there have been debate that whether this increase in temperature is because of anthropogenic or natural process also playing role, and that can be clarified here. This blue line is basically increase in temperature because of the natural process, and the pink color is showing the increase in temperature because of the anthropogenic plus in natural also because in the background. And you can try to see consistently throughout the globe, whether in North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, or South America, the pink color is showing increase in temperature very significantly in the last 25 years. Okay, all the plots. And if you can see in the average over the globe or the land mass or over the ocean, the everywhere you can see the consistency in increase in the temperature in the last 20 to 25 years. So this is showing that global warming is real, because in some quarter there is debate that whether global warming is there, it is or it is not there. So it is basically clear the global warming is real, and you can see evidence of the increase in temperature. And here direct implication over the, if we talk in terms of Himalayan glacier, of course this is the old figure I am showing, and you can see the width of the glacier of one Himalayan glacier in 1978 and 1989 and 1996. And here you can see the glacier is almost retreating, or they are basically very thin. And if you can talk in terms of the area, you can see this is the purple color is the glacier area, and you can see in the 1960s this area was almost 2077 square kilometer, and it's coming down to almost 1592 square kilometer. And this is, of course, I'm not telling you this only because of the aerosol, but it is one evidence that during same period the aerosol optical depth has also increased. So this is showing some evidence that the global warming is there, and its implication on the Himalayan glacier retreat is also there. Now, until now we were seeing on the change in temperature of the last say 100 years, 200 years. Now, what is the basically change in the greenhouse gases? And here some of the greenhouse gases which I am listing here, the carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And this is showing the change in their level on the basically past 10,000 years. You can see here this region is basically for the past 100 to 200 years, and if you compare with this area, you can see tremendous increase in carbon dioxide here. In this period the carbon dioxide was around 200 to 250 to 270 ppm, and you can see in the last 200 years it is increased and almost touching to the 400 ppm now. Same thing with methane, and they almost, you can say, 10,000 years back or 5,000 years back, the level was less than 1 ppm or less than 1000 ppb, almost you can say 700 or 800 ppb. Now it is touching to almost 1.9 or 2 ppm, and same thing is also happening with the nitrous oxide. So that means these gases is also, it is real, it is changing, and the related radiative forcing is also shown here, there how much the radiative forcing of individual gases are there. So because here the major worries comes with the carbon dioxide, and because you can see the radiative forcing is much higher when you compare with the methane and nitrous oxide. So we worry mainly on the CO2. So CO2, when it comes from where it is coming and where it is going, this is the one, the budget part you can say, and you can see the CO2 basically affected by the land use changes. It is having sink over the land, over the ocean, and this part. So these are basically, you don't see the much change. This I'm telling, putting a broad picture, but you see in terms of the emission from the fossil fuel industries, they are significantly increasing. You can see in the last 50 to 60 years significant increase in this CO2 emissions, and that is also leading to the increase in the atmospheric growth. Now, if you again try to see in terms of the some of the specific sources, and this I am just comparing from the CO2 in the atmosphere when it was in 1870 and in the atmosphere in the 2015. Now, presently I am just putting considering value as a 400 ppm. Of course, this is taken from the Khatiwala and the Jose et al. Research, and in the atmosphere the CO2 level was around 288 ppm. Now, from which quarter or which industry or which sources it has increased from 288 to 400 ppm, you can see component wise the coal has contributed almost 91 ppm for enhancement of CO2. Oil industry or emissions or combustion process is also contributed for 68 ppm. The gaseous contributed almost 29 ppm, and cement industry also is contributed almost 5 ppm, and the land use changes contributed for 69. Of course, this is compensated because the land is also having sink, and if you combine both, it is having a sink of almost 8 ppm. So this part is basically balanced. And ocean is also having sink of almost 74 ppm. So with this, you can see the major contribution is coming from the coal and oil and the gases, and making the enhancement of the CO2. So here I would like to just conclude my presentation, and I would like to just show a very nice video and from generated is called the carbon tracker from the NOAA, and it shows the how CO2 level is changing of since last 800,000 years back. So just this is I will say the 1 to 2 minutes movie. So please enjoy, and I would like to maybe just conclude my talk with this. Again, I would like to make announcement. Okay, this I will just tell. So maybe I'll just request for playing this movie. And now here you try to see the change in the CO2 from 1980, and here if you focus on this part how observation changes, this is in the northern hemisphere and this is in the southern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere you can see the observation were very low, very less, and northern hemisphere observation were very high, and you can see the CO2 level is changing from 330 to almost 350 with the time 1987. And on the right hand side you can see very famous plot, we can say the Mauna Loa curve, and you can see this changing very systematically. Seasonal cycle is there, and this plot is increasing, touching to almost 360. Year is here from 1993, and you can see this is also called, see, you can see the breathing kind of thing, or some people also say CO2 pump. And now you can see number of observations is also increasing. An important point, now number of observations is also increasing, and you can see the variability is also increasing. Base value is increasing, but variability is also increasing. Okay, and this focus on the number of observation point changing. Now this is year 2002, and the level is touching to almost 375 ppm and to 380 ppm. And here you can see the Mauna Loa observatory and the observation from the south pole, and you can see this curve, very nice curve is increasing. So this I should again repeat the acknowledgement to the NOAA. They have put very nice effort to combine the global observation to put this kind of observation. Now, so now this is the present time. Now we are going to backward, and this backward, of course, I have not covered that part. How it is done, and you can see the from the Antarctic region, the samples were collected from the ice core, and you can see the some observation here, and it go back to the 1,000 years and several thousand years go back here. Okay, so this is almost coming to pre-industrial area when CO2 level was almost 280 to 270 ppm, and you can see the not much change in this period. So this is the basically you can see the how CO2 level is changes with the time. Now we are coming on the several thousand years back, or you can say 20 years back before the BC, and this is the you are going to the ice age, and when the CO2 level was almost 185 ppm, or less than, you can say, the 200. And of course there is you can see some cycle, and this is again debated how the cycle is basically obtained, but this is the of course you can say this is the basically natural process, I will say. Of course there is some debate on the, you can say, the solar cycle, whether it is also contributing for this kind of the variability in the CO2 level. So I think this I will conclude my talk here. And what I would like to make just formal announcement, if suppose someone is missing the today talk, okay, they can find it on the ARIS web page and also the ARIS YouTube channel. And this talk is also available on the link which is available at the ARIS website. And for the any question answer, maybe I would like to request my colleague if suppose some question. Okay, yeah, there is some question. So, why the climate of the hill station are so soothing with the respect of the plain area during the summer season? Yeah, very good. So, my immediate response to was the temperature is very low, and temperature is low, and you don't have the pollutants level, and you have the basically very conducive atmosphere. Ideal, like you can consider like for some of the pollutants like carbon monoxide, I will say, when you compare with the New Delhi, the carbon monoxide level, average level is around 500 to 1000 ppb. At the mountain region, their background level is around 100, 200 or 300 ppb. So pollutants levels are very low, and the temperature is also very low. So that makes the our atmosphere more soothing. Any? So I think if anybody is having any more question, they can also, my email is given on the front slide, so they can write to me or they can contact me offline. Okay, thank you very much.